guys, I'm Trina and I just finished Queen of Shadows, so let's talk about this book. I know that Queen of Shadows discussion videos are like a dime a dozen right now. Everybody is doing them. Thank you for clicking on mine. I'm not going to tell you what the book is about. I'm not even going to tell you what the series is about, because if you clicked on a video entitled discussion, you probably have already read the book. If you haven't read the books yet and you're not sure if you want to start, or you read the first book and it didn't live up to the hype and you're not sure that you want to continue, my advice to you would be to just know that these books did not really start getting hype until the second book, so it's very, very hyped now for where the series is at. I read the first book back when it was first published. I had never heard of this series before. I just picked it up because it was a book club pick. Nobody was talking about it at all. I don't think people really started talking about it until book 2. When you start book 1 at this moment in time when all that hype has existed, it's not going to live up to that hype. So if you read book 1 and you weren't impressed, you thought, what is the big deal about this? Just know that the series does get better. The characters grow so much. The world expands so much. The writing really improves as the series goes along, because she wrote the first book when she was like 16, I believe. It took 10 years before it got published. And now the rest of the series is being written as it goes. So just know, it does get better, it does grow. If you absolutely hated the first book though, you don't like anything about it, if it's just not your thing, you know, I'm not going to tell you to continue reading and push on, but if there was anything at all that you kind of were holding out hope for, I think that it is worth continuing. I believe all of these books were 5 stars for me, definitely 5 stars for Queen of Shadows. I loved the book. I think that this series is worth continuing, and that's all I really have to say to people that haven't yet read it, and I'm going to get into the spoilery discussions now. So if you have not read the book, you don't want to watch any further. Spoilers in 3, 2, 1. I loved that all the characters are back together now. I think that Heir of Fire was a little bit more slow paced because people were separated and we were getting some new points of view, but I loved Heir of Fire. I think that it was definitely needed. We needed to have Celaena / Aelin, whatever you want to call her, we needed to have her in a land where magic existed so that she could kind of train and get to know what her powers were after that crazy conclusion to book 2. But now she is back in Rifthold and she meets up with Chaol right away. That was really awesome to finally see Aelin see what has happened to Dorian, to finally see Aelin and Arobynn together and how they act around each other. And Rowan comes back, and then we see Arobynn for the first time in the main books, because we only knew him from the prequel before. And also Lysandra, we get to see her from the prequels again. I love that with Lysandra we are meeting a new type of magical creature. I don't think we knew that shapeshifters existed before, at least we didn't know of a character in our story that was one. So getting to see her in action, that was really, really cool. I loved the female friendship between Aelin and Lysandra. Another thing that I want to point out is I love that we got a lot of downtime with our characters. I think that it did kind of have a slow start to this book, but I loved having all of that time at Celaena's warehouse apartment. We had a lot of just human moments where she's talking about clothes and she's talking about scented oils and perfumes, and they're trying to make breakfast together, and those are just little bantering scenes that really make them feel more human, and it makes us get more attached to them, so that it is so much more fulfilling in the end when we get to see all that they have accomplished and what has all been at stake. I really love those scenes because it just lets us get to know our characters better and more in the downtime, because it can't be all action all the time, or then you don't really have anything to lose. We have to talk about ships. I so ship Aelin and Rowan. So let's go back to the beginning of the series. From books 1 and 2, the only really options that we had were Chaol and Dorian, and I was always team Dorian. It's not that I hated Chaol, I just never saw Chaol as a good match for her, because in book 1, Chaol is the captain of the King's Guard, and he's never had to kill anybody, and he has a big stink about the first kill that he makes in the series, and that just didn't seem like he would be a good fit for Celaena, because she was this totally ruthless assassin. I think that he was a little bit judgmental of her, but he tried to look around it, but you need to accept someone for who they really are. The reason that I shipped Dorian was because he is the prince, and if he and Celaena got together, that she would then become queen and they could bring about this great change and restore magic, and just the land would be happy and all that. So I really thought that he would be in the game until book 3. We met Rowan, and Rowan was absolutely my favorite. I loved seeing a full-on Fae and what they can do and what his powers were, learning about his history, and the whole blood oath bond that he took for Aelin. I just really felt like he's a protector. He's going to help her come into her own. He's the only one that can really handle her, that can help her control and use her powers. He's a great match for her. He totally knows where she's coming from, and I know that it was a very brotherly bond in book 3, and I was totally okay with that. I saw it as just a platonic friendship, but I was hoping for more because I personally really liked Rowan. I thought that it was a friendship that could over time grow into a romance, and that is exactly what we saw happen. So that was very, very fulfilling to me in Queen of Shadows when they did kind of start admitting that they had some romantic feelings there, but they did not act on it, and I was so happy about that because the anticipation of that moment when they do get together was so worth it. It was a very slow burn within this book and also with the history that they had from book 3. So it's 2 books now of them building this relationship. It wasn't an instant attraction, it wasn't insta-love, they didn't just jump into bed right away. So I loved that we're having to wait to really see that, and I'm not saying that Rowan is in game, although I am fully on board because Rowan is right now in books 3 and 4. We've got 5 and 6 still coming, so who knows what endgame is actually going to be. And I know that a lot of people were very upset that Chaol is not with her. We still have 2 books left. You have no idea what's going to happen in the end. So let's move on from Rowan because I've kind of exhausted that line. Let's go back and talk about Arobynn for a little bit. I really loved how intimidating of a character he was, but we actually got to see him be defeated. I really didn't think that they were going to kill him in this book. I thought something was going to go wrong at the very last minute. What I love about this series is that Aelin is actually accomplishing the things that she is setting out to do, and she's getting it done, and we are getting a lot of satisfaction as readers. But then there is a little extra twist at the end. Like, Arobynn had ordered that upon his death that the king would be told about Lysandra's power and probably about Aelin's true identity, so you know, he did actually get defeated, and that was very satisfying, but then there was a little kick to it in the end. And the same thing with the king, the bad guy that we've been hating for 4 books, finally saw him defeated, but then there was a little twist, and we found out that he isn't the real threat, that it is actually Duke Parrington this entire time, and that really just makes me want to go back and reread book 1 and see if I can pick up on any of those clues and see, because I remember Duke Parrington was him and Caltaine were pretty heavily in book 1, but we haven't seen him for a while because we have been focused on taking down the king and restoring magic. And I also loved that we don't really know if the king at the very end of the book was being genuine. He says that everything he did and the banishing magic was done to protect Dorian so that the Duke couldn't actually get ahead or couldn't do what he was wanting to do, because without magic he was pretty much powerless. And now that we have restored magic to the land, it turns out that's actually a bad thing. But Dorian really doesn't believe the king was genuine when he said that. I don't know what to think. I kind of believe him, honestly, at this point. So I don't know, I just love how the whole thing just got flipped on its head. I also was so excited to finally see Aelin and Manon go head to head in this book. They had that epic showdown on the temple and the ruins, and I just really loved how Celaena was letting herself be attacked and then ducking away, and so that the pillars were being knocked out so that the entire thing would collapse. It really played out like it was just like a movie in my head, so I loved that scene. I think that was one of my favorite scenes in the entire book, was the showdown between Aelin and Manon. I've been waiting for 2 books now to see them meet, and I was wondering how it would go because Manon is just perfectly poised to be the villain, but every once in a while we see her have a soft spot, like how she did with Abraxas in book 3, and now she's kind of having a soft spot where it comes to Aelin. She told her that Dorian was still in there and he wasn't just totally possessed by the Valg demon. And then Celaena, on the other hand, she is perfectly poised to be the hero, but we know that she also has a dark and ruthless side. So I feel like they are perfect mirrors of each other, and they're just such strong female figures. I'm really, really hoping that in the next book we will see Manon have a total change of heart and team up with Aelin, because as great as it was to see them fight each other, I want to see them on the same side of things. Hope it happens in the next book that they kind of team up together, because I think it's going to be awesome. So I talked a lot about Rowan already, but I also want to talk about Chaol and Dorian. Chaol really, really frustrated me in Queen of Shadows. I don't think he's completely changed and been acting out of character, but I think that the way that he's viewed Celaena/Aelin the entire time has been true since book 1, but just now is kind of coming to light as he is really understanding that she is the heir of Terrasen. So I think that that's why we're seeing a lot more of his feelings kind of come to the front, because this is the first book that he is actually dealing with the fact with her face to face and knowing who she really is, and I think that he's having trouble with it. He was really frustrating me because Dorian is possessed in this book by the Valg demon, and Aelin, she only knows the one experience she's had with the Valg demons over in I forget the name of the place, Windland. When she fought them, she said that the humans were still inside their bodies, but they wanted to be killed. They wanted to be freed because the princess had just corrupted them so much. So she thinks the only way to free Dorian is to kill him. And Chaol throws this giant hissy fit about, you can't kill my friend, he is still in there. This was the most hypocritical thing, because every single night, what was he doing? He was going down in the sewers and hunting and slaying all of these soldiers who were possessed by like more minor Valg demons. So here he was killing other people who they had friends and family that cared about them too, but he killed them without trying to free them, and then he would be just a hypocrite and have a whiny fit to Selena. Quit, stop, sit down. And also later in the book when they had that final showdown and he made his sacrifice, I didn't enjoy that. I did not like that at all. Now, I like it when authors will kill off their characters. I am not afraid of that happening. But the thing is that their plan was Rowan and Arobynn were down in the sewers and they were going to bomb the clock tower, which would break the curse and set magic free in the land. And at that same moment, Arobynn and Chaol were going into the palace to confront the king. And the plan was the clock tower would be destroyed, magic would return, and Arobynn could confront the king and also Dorian at the same time with her fire magic. And when they get to the castle, Chaol decides he's going to change the plans. He's going to sacrifice himself so that he can be a distraction for the king, so that Arobynn can get Dorian and escape with Dorian to just get away from the king long enough for her to free Dorian. So what I didn't like about this is that at that moment when Chaol made that plan to be a sacrifice, he didn't know that the watchtower was not going to be destroyed. In his mind, he thought Arobynn would get her powers back and she could probably defeat the king and save Dorian, and he could be helpful in doing that. So why would he just lay down and die? He did not know that the clock tower was not going to be blown up according to plan, and he did not know that the king knew that Selena was really Aelin Galathynius. It would have made more sense to me if they had walked into the palace, the king revealed he knew who Aelin was, and then they realized it's been like 10 or 15 minutes, why hasn't magic returned? What is going on? Our plan isn't going right, so we need to make a quick on the moment decision and I'm going to sacrifice myself to be a distraction. Now that I could have totally gotten behind, but as it was, I just didn't think it was really useful. It would have made more sense to me if that decision had been made in the moment, and then I feel like it would have been more of a worthy sacrifice because he would have realized their plans weren't going as planned. But I don't know, making it beforehand just kind of seemed like he didn't have faith. Like, how could he have known that it wasn't going to go off right? How? As far as Dorian, obviously I'm really glad that they freed him. I am really worried about him. Like, how is he going to get over that? I think that he was in a pretty bad place. I'm really surprised that he came back as quickly as he did. And honestly, you know, the whole scene with Kaltain over in Amorath, how she was regaining her powers, like she had eaten away at the demon inside of her and come back to herself. Honestly, I kind of thought that that was kind of foreshadowing what would happen with Dorian. I thought that he might be strong enough to finally start eating away at the prince inside of him, and that maybe he would kind of come back on his own. I loved seeing Kaltain come back. I loved her shadow fire. It just sounded really cool and also horrifying, and I kind of wonder if Dorian's power is going to have any kind of effects from the darkness inside of him in the end. Is he going to have some new power that we haven't really explored his power very much other than them finding out that it is infinite? But I'm really concerned about Dorian because how is he going to rule this entire nation on his own? He doesn't have anybody left. He doesn't have any advisors left. Like, Chaol is the hand of the king now, but Chaol and Nezrin are going to go to the southern continent to try to heal Chaol's legs. I really wonder what's going to happen with Dorian in the next book. I don't feel like he and Aelin will really get together at this point because I think that she is going to be set on ruling Terrasen. Like, maybe they will merge the two nations in the end, but I kind of see a possibility of Dorian and Manon getting together later on because, like, I don't really know how that would work. She's a witch and she's immortal, but he recognized her at the end when she was sitting on a Abraxas on top of the new glass wall around the palace. He sees her and he looks up and waves. And then throughout Queen of Shadows, we've seen Manon kind of softening, especially after her conversation with one of her witches. Astrid was telling her about falling in love with that human that lived in the woods, and Manon was asking her, but how was it to love? Like, what did it feel like to love? So I think that Manon is kind of curious about love and kind of curious about humans at this point. Oh, and I have to say that I really loved the end scene where Selena and Rowan and Arobynn were going back to Terrasen, and they walk over the hill and then it just opens up in front of them. They just get their first glimpse of the land and it's like, we're home. I really loved that. That was just so beautiful and cinematic in my mind, and I really can't wait to see where the next two books go. I think that that was the perfect note to end it on. I'm just really looking forward to the next book. I'm gonna have to wait forever for it though. Let me know what you guys thought of Queen of Shadows down below. Did you like it? Did you hate it? What are your thoughts thoughts on the ships. We can definitely discuss it down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching my discussion of it, and I will see you in the comments. Bye!